Welcome, dear students. In the current session, I would focus on reinforcement through Romance languages. The purpose of the session is that by the end of it, you will be able to understand how Romance languages brought enrichment to the vocabulary of English language. Well, my dear students, 16th century pursuits objected to three classes of strange words, because a lot of, borrowings or a lot of, intake into the language in terms of vocabulary was being done. So there were three types of words that were particularly objected in the 16th century. These can be characterized as A, Inchon terms, B, oversea language, and C, Chaucerianism. I would quickly tell you about all the three terms. Well, Inchon terms. These are those borrowed words that were borrowed from French or Latin or for that matter any language, but actually Inchon term is used for the terms that are borrowed without necessity. The word is not required, just to show off, just to be pretentious, just unnecessarily, I would say, the words would be borrowed. Those were called Inchon terms, and there was a lot of criticism on them during 16th century. Oversea language was all the language, that would come from the outer world, outside, world. Oversea, the word gives you the clue for that. And Chaucerianism is the term that is used for, the language that was particularly used at Chaucer's time, how it influenced, how it shaped, how it formed, and how it was carried forward. Well, my dear students, for the foreign borrowings in this particular period that we are concerned with, by no means they were confined to learned words taken from Latin and Greek languages. This was the time, the beginning of the Renaissance period, as a time of learning, willingness and keenness to learn, to experience new things, to experience new inventions, to travel, to communicate. All this was so much happening around in the world. To cope with all that, a lot of vocabulary was required. Naturally, then, all this vocabulary did not come from Latin and Greek languages. Rather, there were many modern languages around that influenced English language. As a matter of fact, at this time point, more than 50 languages contributed towards the vocabulary of English language. Major languages that contributed include Latin and Greek and French languages. Of course, I hope we already know this much, but there were languages like Italian, Spanish, and, many other languages from other parts of the world that contributed. Mainly, this was a time of traveling. The traveling that took place, to France and to other lands, it brought a lot of, vocabulary along. Then there was this consumption of French books. Because people were traveling to France, so they would have some more knowledge of French language, and they would bring in books and reading materials from France, and these books would be consumed here. This, French traveling and consumption of the books is reflected in the vocabulary of the times. All these words, just have a quick look at them. For example, bombast, chocolate, everybody's favorite. Comrade, detail, duel, entrance, easy, explore, equip, naturalize, progress, probability, shock. Look at all these words and you would notice, actually, they are everyday usage words now, but in fact, all of them have French origin, and they came through these, two processes. But the English language also traveled to other areas, and the English people traveled to other lands. For example, the frequent traveling to Italy happened. They observed their architecture there. They brought with them the knowledge of their architecture, of their manners and mannerism and style and fashion. Because Italians are famous for all that. Even if today you go to Italy, you would find, even in their long, narrow streets, you would find all these, hubs of fashion. You would find markets and stores and, all the important brands of, cosmetics and, jewelry and perfumes and makeup. So all the fashion stuff is there. But basically, during the time that we are talking about, there were protests. People were against. The scholars were against what? The Italianate Englishmen, because they thought that these people too much go to Italy and are so much influenced by that actually not only their morals are corrupted because of that, and they have that desire for that outlandish fashions that they do, but also, especially please notice this, it has powered their talk with overseas language, the Italian language that has come from there. Nevertheless, the Italian words like Italian fashions, they frequently were adopted by these people, and they made a reasonable fund of the vocabulary of English language. Some of the words are algebra, balcony, pizza, portico, stanza, by the way, volcano, and many, many more words that came through this channel. Many Italian words were introduced through French. Latin to French to English was one route. And now, Italian to French to English was another route. And by the way, these words like gazette and bankrupt and battalion and gala are the words that came through this route. Some words also came from Spanish and Portuguese. Here is the list: apricot, coral, banana, hammock, hurricane, negro, rusk, tobacco. All these words came from Spanish and Portuguese origin. Why it happened so? There were certain reasons. The cosmopolitan tendencies. The rural life was coming to an end, urban life was starting, the industrial life had replaced the agricultural life. And then there was the spirit of exploration and of adventure that was a gift of Renaissance. Interest in the new world generated interest in new things, which naturally needed new words to, name those things. So, a lot of new vocabulary was introduced.